Welcome to the 98 Central podcast, where we discuss growing a business, working in media, and building a team that we love. I'm Will Stewart, CEO of 98 Central. I'm joined by Jennifer Blair, COO of 98 Central.
Hello, how are you?
Fantastic.
Awesome.
We have a fun topic today.
We do.
It's one around the world that you were involved in, I guess still involved with, and with the company, and that's around social media and captions and how to build and create a smart caption. So technically the title of this podcast is The Anatomy of a Smart Caption.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think your caption is such a great place to give more context to the creative that you're posting, to really display the voice of your company, to give your customers or your audience more information and what to do next. And there's so many ways that you can pull that off.
Yeah. And a lot of times, I guess we focus on let's say with the collective we just focus on video. You make sure you get really nice video in the content. We focus in on the photos, on the carousel, making sure that part is good.
Yeah.
And sometimes you spend, 95% of your creativity there and then kind of ignore the captions and it's kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, I'm a writer, so I'm always going to say like captions probably matter just as much.
Yeah.
Ultimately, social media is a very visual platform, so you can't ignore the video. You can't ignore the graphics. It should be high quality, especially if you're a business, because that's the first thing that's going to catch people's eyes. But what are you going to do to keep them there and keep them reading and just kind of show off who you are?
Yeah. And those captions are kind of, I guess, the follow through after they're maybe attracted to you and they want to see or read more.
Yep. Then
those captions need to be engaging. So there's lots of different ways that you can make a caption. There's lots of different avenues and paths. A lot of it has to do with tone.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the things that I see, or that I think clients that I've worked with are worried about, is how do they sound on social media? And social media is a place you have to remember that it's very conversational. It's like a global forum of sorts. And you've got people outside of your business there who then feel more comfortable to reach out to you or even just be an observer of your business. And you don't need to talk to them in corporate speak. This is where you show off who you are at the core of your business and understand what you're about. And so you can talk like a human there. It's not an email. It's not an internal memo. It's not a brochure necessarily. It is how you connect on a human level with customers. And so that doesn't mean that you have to go the crazy route of the Duolingos and the Wendy's of the world. There's so many different ways that you can pull off your tone and still be professional, but conversational.
Right. Yeah. And there's a ditch on both sides. I mean, unless you really want to do that Duolingo thing, if people are not familiar with what that is,
go look it up.
Look it up on TikTok, right? It's all on TikTok.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's very bizarre and it's out there and it works for their audience and they have lots of following and it's become its own life of its own. Wendy's the same thing. Wendy's roast people basically on Twitter. And it's conversational, but it's to the extreme.
Yeah. They get in fights with moon pie and Kentucky Fried Chicken and whatever else,
Right.
So it's hilarious. But
so you don't have to do that as a business, but it kind of, I think about the old ads that they used to run in the 30s, 40s, 50s, where it was a full page, very tightly typeset, content and story. It's fascinating. Great copy.
I love reading those. I'll go on Pinterest sometimes and just Google vintage ads. I need to find a book of them and just sit there. That's my dream, is to just cover my wall in vintage ads one of these days.
That's good. I'm with you right there.
Yes, but it's painting that picture, and it's it's really, especially for products, you want that person to see themselves there. You want them to see themselves using it. You want to make them feel worthy to have it. This is the thing that you need. And that's just it's storytelling. It's relatable. It is aspirational. And kind of going off of that, there's so many different ways, to bring that tone out. One of the ones that I was thinking of that does a great job of telling stories is a suitcase brand. It's called Monos, Monos. Their brand is very luxury travel kind of feeling. It's a Canadian company and they handmade these things and these suitcases, and they source their materials from very specific places. And, they can tell you where they get their wheels, where they get their antimicrobial lining in their suitcase, how their clasps are built, where the zippers come from. So it's very intentional. And all of that is part of their brand, and it comes out in their tone and their social media too. So they, their blog, they call it their dossier. So that itself, right? Like that's a word choice that it's not, oh, come read our blog. No, like explore our dossier. You see the difference there? Yeah. And so that's the kind of tone that they put out on their social media. And they use really like experiential language, if that makes sense. You know, they just put out something in their dossier about traveling to Copenhagen, right? And so it's not just going to say like, hey, go and eat at these places. They're going to go and they're going to talk about that specific restaurant. They're going to talk about the decor. They're going to talk about the flavors that you get there. So you see how it like, it pulls you in, and it gets very detailed. It makes you feel like you're there. And so there, the luxury and the experience kind of comes through. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then you got Duolingo on the other side, who's just like, hey, she's a 10, but I don't know.
All the TikTok trends.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Yeah. So again, nailing that tone is so important to match your brand. I think a lot of brands probably feel like they need to be stiffer or more formal.
Yeah.
And all that. And we've seen a lot of our clients that when they first come to us, they want to trend, I think, more on that kind of safer side of things. Yeah. But it's okay to venture out, test the waters. I mean, you don't want to go too deep. You know, there's a balance there, but you want to find that a little bit more conversational tone.
Yeah. And I think a good example of that, we have several corporate coaching clients. On one side, we have a team that they're very relationship driven. And, we work with them on a business level too, not just like creating content for them. But they are extremely warm people. They're extremely intelligent people. And so it would be so easy to skew their content and their copy kind of like corporate feeling, but no, like their brand is that warmth. And so how can you bring that into their copy and make it feel like you're not just talking to all of social media, you're talking to one person on the other side of that. You're talking specifically to their problem, and you feel like a trusted advisor on the other side of that. Yeah. And so that's one of the ways that we try to do it for them. Always think of one person in your mind when you're writing for that. It's not for the masses.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah. So good. And it goes back to what you said at the very beginning of this section on tone, and that is it's social media. Emphasis on the word social. Yeah. It's people in a room talking.
Yes.
And as a brand, if you focus on that and say, like, this is a community I'm fostering, I'm not just here to pitch the latest corporate-y speak. Right. And actually have a conversation with a real human, a real person, that's going to help guide that tone.
It's boring. You know what I mean? Like if you go on the corporate side, like, oh man, it just gets boring. And that's even working with younger staff members, interns that I've worked with, new hires that are straight out of college. One of the things that I always have to tell them is like, this is going to sound really bad. We're beating the educational tone out of your writing. Like you cannot like write for social. You can't write for websites. You can't write for anything the way that you would write a college paper.
Like an academic paper is way different.
Yes, exactly. And so as I'm working with younger writers and trying to get them, sort of more into this world, that's the same thing we have to say all the time. And for me, it gets really nitpicky down to word choice. Word choice is so important. And that's the thing that carries your tone and carries your voice. Again, going back to Monos, it's not a blog, it's a dossier. It's not, can't think of one off the top of my head, but there's one that we were talking about yesterday. It was like, if you write something like, it's a wide variety of content, that sounds stiff. Yeah. So how can you reword that sentence to bring in word choices that get across the tone that you want? Yeah.
And it's funny how there's certain word pairings that just everybody uses. It's kind of the trope for business. And, we all know what they are. When we see them, we just know, circling back is one.
Oh my gosh, yes.
An email.
In the pandemic, it was unprecedented.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And together was another one that came out a lot. Like, we're going to get through this together. Like everybody was using the same language.
Yeah. And when you use that same language, it starts to feel disingenuous because everybody's using it. It's not unique to you. It feels like you just copy pasted from somebody else. Yeah. Someone did it from the pandemic. They put together a compilation of the commercials that were released in the first month. Yeah. And we're cutting from one to the other, and they're all using the same words.
And it all just gets the same point across.
Yeah, it's very vanilla.
Oh, I want to see that. I want to see that. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's really great. Yeah. So having those captions, that tone is so important. Yeah. if someone's listening to this and they're like, oh, what should I do next if I really want to make my tone better? One thing you taught me was put in contractions.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. That's such a simple tip. Yeah. Don't write could not, write like can or couldn't, you know? Yeah, that's a big one. That's so it's so like situational to me. So like, I think that's just like, that's an easy one to get across. Like the length of your sentences, the punctuation that you're using, probably you should avoid semicolons. You know what I mean? Like unless you're writing a dissertation or something that's just going to feel weird in a social media caption. But I also think if you don't even know where to start for tone at all, like write down a list of words that you associate with yourself and your brand. Like even like, what are things that customers say about like working with you? Or what do they say about your product? What do they say about their interactions with you? And like go on Google reviews too, if you need to. I'd like started throwing out there, picking out some words that customers are perceiving and see what tracks, see what makes sense to you. And one of the things that I always did from like a branding and copywriting standpoint, when it was more on the like full service agency side, I really like to have contrasts. So we are this, but not this. Like we are polite, but not syrupy. Like we're not pandery. We are, I don't know. So like that way you can kind of really like hone in that word choice and kind of give you direction onto how you should sound.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's good. Some great things for people to think about as they're listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
Just hit the pause button right now to go do that. Run that exercise. So another one that people need to consider when they're thinking about the anatomy of a smart caption is structure. Having the right structure. Because a lot of times you might have the right pieces in place, but they're just kind of in the wrong order.
Right.
Go ahead.
I think this is always going to be platform based. So think about what you write on Twitter is not going to be like what you write on Instagram. What you write on Facebook is not going to be, well, Facebook and LinkedIn can be similar, but still, it's all going to change. Yeah. Twitter, it can be short, it can be pithy. It kind of needs to be. You've got a character limit. Instagram, I feel like, has become almost like a journal of some sorts, and you can really take the time to talk and reflect a bit more if that's the kind of post that you're writing. And I think that what is really critical, especially Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, is what is that one topic that you're trying to get across in this post? And you can think about that almost in a way that you would for writing a web page for SEO purposes. Like, what is the one thing that you want to get across? But then also, what is the thing that you want that person to do at the end of it? You always have to remember to tie in a business goal to that post, especially if you're posting as a business. So ask them a question, like, what do you think about this topic? Tell them, hey, you can learn more at this link in our bio, assuming that's Instagram. Stay tuned. There's a whole series on this. What else do you want to know about this? So you just want to make sure that you're either you're hooking them in and you're giving them a reason to come back and follow, to do something, to take some kind of action and not just keep scrolling past. Yeah. Another one, going back to the beginning of the caption, is how are you going to hook them into it? How are you going to drag them to that CTA at the bottom and get them that far down? And so one thing that I always tell the team is like, okay, this post has a purpose. It's that one keyword that we're trying to write for. Yeah. What is the problem that we can tie that to? What are we solving? What information do we have here? What is the thing that's going to like drive the lizard brain to say, oh, I can connect with that. I want to see how they solve it. Yeah. And I think that that's probably like the best way to think about a hook. And then there's so many different ways to execute it, whether it's like, oh, I wish I knew these 3 things before I did this. Yeah. Or like one thing nobody ever told me about blank. Like, so how do you, like what is, if that blank is that thing that person is wondering too? Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many great things that you can write for a hook. A lot of times it needs to have some kind of a question or some kind of prompt where someone's like, oh, that's me. You need to create a conflict essentially. Yeah. Yeah. Where it's like, okay, there's this conflict and set it up and then resolve it somehow in the copy. Right. And there's so many different types of captions. Not everything follows this pattern, but having a hook that is clear so people know what to expect next.
Exactly.
What's going on next. You can't really start into the story. It doesn't need to be like long time ago in a land far, far away. It needs to be like, hey, have you ever had a Death Star outside your planet and really need to destroy it? Here's how you do that. Cool.
And like, you don't always have to have and we're talking about long captions and long form captions, you don't always have to have that. If it's something that's more on the Duolingo side of the tone spectrum, you can probably just do something short and sweet and a little like, Gen Z weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to really go in. But again, it goes back to what are you trying to do? What is the purpose of that platform? What is the message that you want to get across? If you're going to skew quirky, cool. I think it's actually Moon Pie. I think it's Moon Pie who does this on Twitter, where every now and then they just like go super serious. So I can't remember what this, I will have to find an example and put it in the show notes, but I think it was probably during the pandemic or kind of just all the chaos that was happening in 2020. And while they have built this presence around just saying ridiculous things, when they say something serious and take a stance on something, whether it's like a human rights issue or whatever else, it gets so intelligent and so super serious and people listen. It's crazy to me. Like that is one example of like just about facing and going 180 and having it work.
It's interesting you use the word intelligent because even the flippant kind of silly type descriptions, they're very intelligent.
Yeah.
And the good ones.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my gosh. They're so smart. I wish I could write like that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't have that sort of like A, pop culture awareness and B, comedy brain, I guess. I don't know. So.
But speaking of hooks, I'll tell you one a failure of mine. So in the LinkedIn post I posted recently as of the recording of this podcast is about a book that I just read about why businesses fail. It's by Jim Collins. Fantastic book. Yeah. And I started my sentence with, I try to read a book every weekend, and which is something I do Saturday and Sunday. I'll read through the book. And that was my first sentence, which doesn't, then I didn't go into like, here's how you do it too. It wasn't like I was going to be talking about this is how you can achieve that as well. And this is my rhythms to make sure I can do that. Yeah. With a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. I just said that. And then I went into like, and this is the book I read and this is it. Yeah. I should have written, have you ever wondered why some seemingly successful business fails? Well, there's this great book by Jim Collins or, like just some kind of a way to set up. Yeah. And I could later say, like, I read a book every weekend. It wasn't really necessarily, I wasn't trying to brag or anything like that. It was just more a conversation like, I do it every weekend. And this happens to be the book that I read this weekend. Yeah. But it wasn't, it was good. It would be a good way if I was at a party to start a sentence, but not a good way for social media. Right. Exactly. There's just so much, there's so much that you can see and that you scroll through that you've got to have something super thought provoking in the front there to make people, again, like, what is that basic thing that everybody else is wondering too that you can pull them in with. Yeah. And the last thing is that call to action, the CTA, which is prompting people. And a lot of times when people think about call to action, it's just buy my widget. But for social media, a lot of it is about building a community. Yeah. Kind of like with the Moon Pie example, you're building this community, and then that time when you need them to really pay attention, you can leverage that attention that they've been giving you for all the other reasons. Yeah. So a CTA could be just a really thought-provoking question. We have a client that I was just looking at the post they wrote today, and they wrote, "Am I wrong? Like, do you like? What do you think about this?" Yeah, and it's just a hey, go comment and tell me what you think. But even just the whole like, "Am I wrong?" thing, that in itself is you're using, like, think about your pronoun that you're using I or your noun, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Don't judge my grammar. You're only a writer. I know, right? I don't say that it's correct. I just feel it. So yeah, like that right there is putting a personalization to it. It's not feeling like it's a brand, right? It's a human connection. It's also like, that is just such a conversational phrase that makes people either like, if they do think you're wrong, they're going to say, heck yeah, you are. Right. And they're going to start engaging there. Yeah. Or that could also be such a powerful rallier of agreement too on that other side. Not that we want people to be fighting with us on social media. We want to avoid that at all costs usually. But still, we want to light a passion that makes people actually take in that extra time to leave a comment. Yeah. And turn that social media content into a conversation. So important. If it's just one way, if it's just like, I'm going to post something great and you're going to like it, and, it doesn't do anybody any good. Yeah, yeah. It really doesn't help foster and build a community. Right. People need to feel like they're a part of it. Agreed. And then one other thing that I want to mention about CTAs, again, so platform specific, but be mindful of the type of CTA that is appropriate for the platform that you're on. Yes. Don't put a link in an Instagram caption. Don't go on Facebook and tell people to follow the link in bio. You're just being confusing and you're not
serving your business well. You're not, you're just confusing people. You're just going to confuse people. Like if you're on Facebook and think about, if you have an older audience and you're telling them to tap the link in your bio, they're just going to be confused. They don't know where they're going. So it takes a little bit of extra time. Yes, you have to go in and you have to tailor each post to your thing. You can't just hit the cross post to Instagram, cross post to Facebook. You've got to be intentional about it and take the extra time to do it, but it will serve you well in the long run.
Yes, it absolutely will. 100%. Yeah, it drives me nuts when I see
me that. Too. Oh my gosh. I think if you want me to, if you want to like get me annoyed, show me an Instagram post with a link in it.
Yeah. So the final way we can make smart captions is hashtags. And this could be its own podcast.
Oh my gosh,
episode.
I could talk so much about that.
Yeah. But hashtags, I mean, there's a lot of people that say it's like a piece of luggage. If you're going off for 2 weeks of vacation, let's just cram as many as we can. Let's just get as many hashtags. If 10 are great, then 50 are even better.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So when I think of hashtags, I almost specifically think of Instagram. I have not quite formed intelligent thoughts about TikTok yet. I think I have to experiment a little bit more. But Instagram specifically, you have to be so intentional about your hashtags. Tactically, they say that you should put them, there was a trend where you would put them in the first comment, but these days, I don't know, algorithm gods, whatever else, they should be in your caption. Apparently they perform better there. But you also have to think strategically about don't just say, okay, hey, I'm a business, hashtag business. I'm these things. I'm, like any word that comes to your head, that's not the best way to do your hashtags. You have to think through what is my business? Like we're a video production company. So we often use video production, things that are related to that world. Then you have to think about the specific content of that post. So we just put one out about using a prism in front of the camera. So then we went and found a bunch of hashtags about prism and prism photography and like fractals was another one. Like all of these things that relate to that. So business, specific content of that post. You want to do any sort of branded hashtags that you have. We don't really use those ourselves. We should probably think about doing that. But think about Adobe. I think they might have a couple. REI is another one that's opt outside, so they have like really specific branded hashtags that they use. For us, like local hashtags are really big. And if you're a local business, then you use your local hashtags. The city of Simpsonville has some. That Greenville is a huge hashtag that people use. So what is very specific to where you live or the group of people that you're trying to reach? So don't just, again, litter hashtags out there. Think really strategically about what you want to hit. And I like to say 5 of each one of those buckets. So 5 for your business, 5 for your topic, 5 for branded, 5 for local if you can. And that just makes it much more strategic. And on top of that, layer that on when you're doing your research, look at how many times that hashtag has been used.
Yes.
Because if it's been used millions and millions of times, you're going to get lost in that feed. And so I always recommend that we try to go for hashtags between 20 and like 80K. You can have a variety of volume, but the more you wrangle in that volume, the less opportunity you have to get lost.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. And more doesn't necessarily mean better.
Right.
It's got to be targeted and strategic.
Right. Exactly.
Got to be smart.
Yes.
That's the anatomy of smart captions. Yes. Super interesting to chat and discuss that through with you. What are you digging?
What am I digging? Okay, so I did fall down the Monos suitcase rabbit hole.
Yes.
I told my husband the other day, I'm just going to keep talking about the suitcase people. Okay. You just have to get used to it. But no, I just started reading into their dossier and reading all the things and all the places I don't want to travel now. And so I've just been kind of in this weird travel planning mindset and just, I don't know.
I love how aspirational that is.
It is so aspirational. Yeah. You got to be careful because all of a sudden you're booking a $3,000 flight to Copenhagen,
You know what? There's worse ways to spend money.
There's worse ways to spend money.
I love that.
How are you? What are you digging?
I'm digging drums. So I'm a musician and typically stringed instruments. So guitar and electric guitar and bass. And
do you still have your guitar in your office?
No, I moved it. It's now at home because I really love that guitar. Okay. So I have all these different brands. I have a custom one that I made and I designed and I play banjo, all these things. And then I was like, I really want to try drums. I've never been able to play them. I want to try them. And so I bought me an electric drum set because I didn't want to bother my wife and kids.
You don't want real drums.
Right, exactly. One of those electric ones. So got a set that I like, got it in my music room.
Yeah.
And I was like, how hard can it be? Like, really, how hard can it be? And apparently it's very hard.
I was going to say, because, okay, you know how you always hear like musicians really good ones can just kind of pick it up and figure it out. And like music is music. And if you know where the notes are, I don't know. So is it?
And I've always been that way. Like I'm that way where like, just give me an instrument and, you know, like
play around for a second.
Yeah, I play around and I get a song and I can go into it.
Yeah.
But drums are different because it's a lot about rhythm and it's a lot about less. Well, I mean, it is a very musical instrument, but it's less about the notes.
Yeah.
And more about hitting the right things at the right time and expressing through like the different symbols and then you use both feet and both hands
so much coordination
in different ways.
Yeah.
And so you're beating different beats and different things. It's crazy.
It looks like a workout. It looks like a really good workout.
It is a workout.
Yeah.
It's a good de-stressor. Like if I'm starting to feel like a little anxious and a little just like, I'll play drums. And like if I'm working from home, it's a great 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like I'll just go like play a song because you can like play the song through your headphones and you can.
That's super cool. So good, so. Yeah. I've always been just like fascinated by drums. Like
they're cool.
Yes. I don't know. I just think it's such a cool thing to be able to do and execute.
I now have a newfound appreciation for drummers. I used to think they were like sub musicians.
Yeah. No. Oh God. No. When I'm watching live music, I watch the drummer. Like goodness. I don't know. I think it's so cool.
Yeah. It's insane. So shout out to all the drummers out there. Right. I'm sure lots of drummers are listening to this podcast. So got a good, that's our little niche there. Drummers.
Drummers.
So cool. Well, thanks everybody for watching and listening along. We're 98 Central. We exist all different sorts of places online. So we're at 98c.org if you want to learn about us via our website. We're on Instagram and Facebook,
LinkedIn, sort of Twitter, and hopefully TikTok soon.
Yeah.
So
oh my goodness.
all the places.
It's a new adventure for us. That'll be fun. But if you're struggling with captions, trying to figure that sort of thing out and just need an extra hand, someone to look at a caption and give you a few tips, just write us. Write hello@98c.org and we'll get back to you and we'll give you a little bit of advice there on what you can do. So thanks everybody for watching and listening along, and we'll see you next time.
Oh boy.
Working in smart media and building a smart team that we smartly love.
Here's what I keep telling myself. Don't do this. Don't do this. Just sit like this.
Welcome to the 98 Central podcast, where we discuss growing and I slurred my words.